All right, we're into the last few sessions of the day, and I'm very excited to introduce our next panel, which is talking all about whether Australia is a laggard or a leader. So we're looking at a global take on Australia's progress toward forward-leaning digital asset regulation, promoting consumer protection and trust. A little bit of a mouthful, but we'll get into it. So on the panel today, we have Carl Mohan from Crypto.com, Ryan Parsons from SwiftX, and moderating the panel is David from Cornwalls. Welcome.
Thanks very much, Rachel. And apologies for the mouthful, but I might just sort of unpack a bit of that to unlock our themes for the next 25 minutes. So, Laggard, our leader, I don't think we're going to have a definitive answer, but like the rest of the globe, we're at an inflection point in terms of regulation of crypto assets. And we thought it would be a good opportunity to have two reputable exchanges, Australian going global and global in Australia, to talk about the regulatory context from their particular perspectives. And that's why we talked about a global take. And now the other aspect of this discussion is to do with forward-leaning digital assets regulation promoting innovation, which is a desirable outcome, and also maximizing consumer protection, which is also a desirable outcome. Now, in social theory, they talk about essentially contested concepts like things like liberty and democracy, which are inherently open to interpretation. So one of the difficulties for governments, as well as, I guess, for the businesses that are regulated by them, is this binary, so-called potential binary opposition between innovation and consumer protection. But we will unpack whether it is, in fact, a binary opposition. And we're very pleased to have with us today two very qualified speakers on this area. So Carl Mohan joined Crypto.com as General Manager of the APAC region in August 2021. And he brings with him over 20 years of experience in financial services. He's worked on the delivery of products across the financial services spectrum, including digital wallets, issuance of business lending and scheme cards, and including working with the National Australia Bank, where he was the head of product, partnerships, and growth. Carl is a chartered accountant and also holds an MBA from Monash. Ryan is the co-CEO of SwiftX and the super and equities trading platform Superhero, following the merger of the two. And Ryan is the former CEO of the world's largest digital learning platform, Go1, and has served in several significant roles in a number of large multinationals in Australia and the UK, including UBS. So I think that's by way of introduction, and I'm certainly really looking forward to hearing what Carl and Ryan have to say about this topic, which I won't use the word vexed because I don't think that's the right approach to take. Let's be positive about it and look at it as a great opportunity to really set the rails down for a positive environment and framework that protects both consumers as well as promoting a sensible business environment. Now, that may sound idealistic. I'm not trying to be idealistic, but let's aim for that. With that intro, I'd just like to ask, if I may, each of you, Carl and and Ryan, whether you think, gentlemen, that regulatory change is needed in Australia?
Do you want me to take that one? Sure. Yeah, I guess the really short answer would be yes. I think that crypto is something that's very much here to stay. I think that Australian consumers have certainly sort of spoken with their interest, and I think there's survey after survey would show that the adoption rates are only increasing. We know regulation's coming, and we really welcome it. And I think just given that interest that consumers have, it just makes like a huge amount of sense to put a regulatory perimeter around sort of that activity. I think that it just solves so many problems. I think it allows the consumers to have the right level of protection, because obviously that's what the reg is all about. But from a sort of business in that industry, it just allows us to get on with it. It allows us to just go ahead, sort of deliver products and services that our customers want, and that's what we're here for. And be able to do that without any sort of second guessing what we're doing. Is this right? Is this wrong? Is it grey? Is it black? Is it white? I think that's the really important thing. And look, you'll probably get sort of sick of Carl and I saying it today, but it's kind of got to be fit for purpose, this regulation. And that's the most oft-used phrase in this sort of discourse at the moment. And I mean, what does that mean? I guess it's just really achieving that balance between consumer protection and allowing consumers to have access, choice, and really that choice and access to like value, utility, and opportunity.
Thanks, Ryan. Carl?
David, I was going to say something really profound here and say, no, we don't want regulation. And that would be like a kid, those who have kids, you just baked a chocolate cake and, they've got crumbs coming off their face and they go like, did you eat the chocolate cake? There can't be an answer no, because I can see it in your face. Look, I think, Ryan and I have talked about this, whilst jokes aside, it is the only industry across the globe, right? Not only in Australia, but across the globe that is crying out for regulatory clarity, right? We don't want self-regulation. We don't want code of conducts. We don't want, maybe, God forbid, a royal commission, right? We know what we want, right? And we've been calling out for regulatory clarity for years now. And I think the momentum's building, and the signs are there that one, policymakers, they're not in the room, by the way, so I can speak my mind. We see you. The policymakers are open to discussion. And coming back to your question, is Australia a leader or a laggard here? I would say culturally it's a leader, right? And the reason is because as a culture, we are very collaborative, right? And that's the Aussie culture. When I tell people in other countries that I look after that, hey, guess what? We had a closed room discussion with the regulator to formulate thinking around what regulation should look like. They look at me and go, totally agape and going, really? You mean to say that they didn't just give you a policy paper and say this is what's happening? No, that's not our culture, right? So I think it is hitting the right track, David, and I think we're going to have a very good 2023.
Thank you. That's really fantastic to hear and very positive and encouraging. Now, I spoke in the introduction about potentially a tension between consumer protection and innovation and businesses pushing on to do new things. Could I ask each of you to just talk generally about that, if I may?
Yeah, sure. Like, I mean, to the extent that there's tension between, I guess, regulators who are sort of driving consumer protection and innovators, I think actually that's almost a must. I think that we only get to the right result for consumers if you've got that level of tension, right? And the right result for consumers is what both sides want. We want to deliver value. Regulators want to protect consumers in sort of that delivery. So I think it is true that certain sorts of innovation just going unchecked can lead to unintended consequences. I think some of these innovators are off trying to drive value for their customers, and whilst most of them have the consumer's best interest at heart, without the checks and balances of that regulator sort of setting the guardrails, then things can go wrong. And like crypto is potentially one of those spaces. I think that the perfect union of regulation and innovation provides the perfect product, and I think that's the utopia that we'd all be looking for. In terms of tension between regulators and innovators as the process goes on, I think that's always going to happen. I mean, the pace at which innovators innovate is much further beyond what I think regulators are even able to sort of respond to. I mean, they're trying to wrap their arms around a technology that these innovators have created and are sort of exploiting. And so, that's going to take time. It takes sort of getting up to speed and sort of really thinking through the different outcomes for the consumer to give them the right level of protection. So, but I think I'm really confident in Australia, and Carl already called it out. In fact, even earlier today, I was asked in a mini interview for Intersekt what was the highlight for me of the conference, and I said it was actually that interaction with regulators, having regulators in rooms and talking through these problems and working together. I really do believe that's the highlight of the conference.
David, I want to pick up on consumer protection a little bit, right? And I like to tell a story, and the story of my dad, right? And it's really annoying because, whenever my dad visits, he lives overseas. Whenever he visits and he sits in the front seat, we're driving, he never wears his seatbelt, right? He doesn't. And then, I'm yelling at him, my words, I'm his son, so it doesn't ring a bell at all, right? And I'm telling him, Dad, you got to wear a seatbelt, not just because there's a cop around the corner, but it's for your own safety, right? Wouldn't have a bow fit until grandson comes along and grandson starts telling him and advising him, and suddenly it's important because he's got to live for the grandson. But the reason I tell this story is because it's relevant in this case as well in a very unique way, right? So whilst consumer protection and policymakers, regulators have to protect consumers, very similar to seatbelts, but education is important as well, right? And I think without those two going hand in hand, you'd have consumer protection that would be something that local or the consumers might look at it and go like, I don't believe in this. I don't buy that you are actually protecting me. And because of the nature of crypto tokens, blockchain, of it being ubiquitous internationally and accessible by anyone with a simple device like a mobile phone, you're going to get folks going like, nah, not going to adhere to this consumer protection stuff, and I'm going to go overseas, right? So I think it's the right balance between providing the protection because we want to protect the interests of the consumers, at the same time compiling a good education system. And Ryan, it's interesting to know that you were on a digital online learning solution, and I think this is a good combination. Maybe it's serendipitous that we're sitting next to each other here because I think that's missing right now. And we are pushing as an organization, and I'm sure you guys are as well, to drive that education piece.
Thank you. The next question, we've talked a bit in the abstract about needing to drive consumer protection and reconcile that with innovation and so on. You may or may not, both of you, be able to speak of any specifics, but are there any particular items you might have on your list as things that might be helpful in terms of reform?
Yeah, there's certainly a few. I guess the first one is probably more a principle around it. It's sort of clarity in guidance and sort of continued regulatory engagement. And again, we'll come back to certain themes again and again. So, that's pretty self-explanatory, but I think really important to call out. The other thing is a recognition of the different types of models, and Carl and I have spoken about this as well. There's more than one model of sort of delivering sort of crypto assets to consumers in Australia. There's the broker model, which Crypto.com and SwiftX are, and there's a peer-to-peer exchange model. And I think that both of those models drive value differently. Our founders this morning in a separate session talked about that and sort of the different value that can be extracted from a broker model. And I think it's really important that those models are considered as part of this regulatory reform process. And the third thing, and again, it's something Carl and I are so aligned on all of these things, but what we don't want is unintended consequences from regulation. What we don't want to happen is to regulate away a product and a service from an Australian sort of authorised business, because you know what? Australian consumers want this, and Australian consumers are going to go offshore. They're going to go to an unregulated venue and get that product and get that service, because that's just the nature of crypto. And I think it's really important that we look out for those unintended consequences.
I'll just add two more to that, right? So maybe a little bit of sprinkling of paprika to your curry. So the first one is, it's going to be, we talk about fit for purpose, right? So the fit for purpose here is it's going to be technology neutral. If we look at it and say, okay, this is how the token is going to behave, or this is how the blockchain is going to behave. 3 years ago, 4 years ago, NFT was not a thing, right? And suddenly you've got NFTs today, they're big. Tomorrow it might be the metaverse or something else. And I think the technology neutrality is critical. That's the first. The second, for me, and I see this globally, right, is harmonization of regulation, right? So you want to make sure there is some degree of, it's like a dance, right? So you can't just go out in the dance floor and do your own move, because then you look like an idiot. So you just want to make sure that you're dancing appropriately and everyone's moving to the rhythm. And I think that's what we're looking for here. So those are the two things that I'd add on to what you said, Ryan.
Thanks, Carl. And that's actually a neat segue onto our next segment, which is both of you in various forms have an interest in international harmonization. Could each of you just speak generally about international experiences and the extent to which insights can be obtained both from Australia for overseas and vice versa?
Yeah, maybe I'll start, particularly from an Australian business that's looking potentially to go overseas. We have obviously operating in Australia and New Zealand. We have an application in with the FCA to be regulated over there. And actually, I'll have to compare notes with Carl later to see how they managed to get that one done. But, we certainly have a perspective on sort of global regulation and how that can inform sort of Australia. I think there's definitely a rising tide of global regulation. I guess what there isn't is a dominant starting point as to how best to attack this. Crypto, by its nature, is decentralized, distributed. Its architecture sort of defines that. So it makes it truly transnational. And that's and also the always-on market, the 24/7, 365 market, creates really unique problems for regulators to wrap their arms around. Definitely unique problems, and you would think that the best way to sort of deal with sort of regulating a global phenomenon is to have global harmonization. That's definitely sounds or seems like the best way to go about it. Does seem like quite a long way from being realised right now, and Carl's probably got some better experience at how that's playing out in different jurisdictions. But it certainly seems like the way to go about it. I guess there has been some moves towards harmonisation. I think the US is, as in so many things, innovation taking a bit of a lead there. They've even got an interagency sort of response going to look at sort of interacting with their foreign counterparts on matters around sort of crypto and sort of cross-border things like security, global financial stability, consumer business protections, a bunch of things that, I think they're looking at engaging with sort of almost every sort of financial regulatory body and sort of doing that. And so that's really good to see. It's a good first step, but again, sort of that international harmonization seems like quite a way off. I think there's still a void again in sort of developing where the starting point comes from. And look, as Australia, I think it's within our gift to sort of move forward quickly and sort of grab that mantle. There's other sort of cautionary tales out there. I know that sort of crypto.com's now in the UK, but I think we've seen there what a lack of legislative guidance has sort of done. Like the FCA has taken an incredibly cautious approach, and there's only a handful of sort of crypto asset firms that have been regulated over there. And despite sort of the political discourse in the UK about what a positive thing crypto is, we certainly haven't seen the effect of that from sort of firms being regulated to carry out crypto activity.
Is there any lawyers in the room except you? Oh, there are a few. Oh, God. Okay. I got to be cautious about what I say then. I think the problem and the challenge we face with global regulation is language, right? Maybe it's localized lawyer thing where it tries to confuse. We got Casper here, Web somewhere else, DPT in another country, and it's like keeping up with the language, which means the same thing, and slight nuances in the definition is the major challenge. And I think if all you lawyers could get together and form a club and actually sort that would be amazing, because I think that is the first challenge. The second is, whilst every country has a view of, again, we go back to the story of consumer protection, right? They look at it from consumer protection from a nationalistic view, and that's right because you make laws to protect your own population. But because it's so globalized, this thing is like trying to regulate the internet, right? If you don't have coordination or standardized, harmonious program of policies, it's not possible. The whole consumer protection just falls away because people go elsewhere. And I guess the final one for me in this space, right? I think this space is moving fast. Like regionally, some countries in APAC anyway that I see, right? Like whether it's Indonesia, Philippines, Singapore, Malaysia, they all have very clear regulation that regulate virtual asset service providers, which is the term they use. And I would like Australia to drive faster because we clearly have a very robust ecosystem in the market. We have a very clear, again, policymakers, regulators that want to move as well. And there's this good collaboration between industry and regulators, right? So I think the ingredients are there, and my view is let's get on with it.
Thanks, Carl. And just on the question of harmonization, clearly there's the IOSCO FinTech task force, which has put out its work plan for the next so many months, which does include discussion papers and so on crypto and digital assets and DeFi. But and the regulators who actually are part of that IOSCO body would have a view on this. But as one of you said, I don't think it's something that is going to happen anytime very soon because of the intrinsic difficulty of managing different jurisdictions and having a systematic and mutually agreed thing throughout those jurisdictions. But it's a good start, and let's hope it leads to something. I just check the time. It's 7 minutes to 4. So, gentlemen, are there any other comments you want to make before we throw it open to questions?
We were just talking, we're going to make a cheeky comment. I think AFL's a better sport than NRL, but
we were trying to find some ground on which we didn't agree, and
Yeah.
sort of we sponsor the NRL, Crypto.com's got the AFL, so we're certainly at odds on that one.
Yeah. And of course, being a Melbourneian, AFL's a better sport, by the way.
Well, we might throw it open for questions then. I think there's a roving mic there, so if you could kindly raise your hand. We have one question. Thank you.
Yeah, so I just wanted to ask, obviously, if you go onto crypto Twitter and you spend 20 minutes there, you'll probably see the turn phrase, not your keys, not your coin. And I just wanted to find out your guys' opinion on addressing the right to self-sovereignty as a part of regulation. So being able to have your own private keys and having custody of your own crypto assets.
Let me answer this, right? So I think you got to have, again, two parts, right? So you're right. The sophisticated crypto user will grasp onto that phrase and say, yes, I can manage myself, I can do all of that. But the average person, especially in the last 12, 18 months, we've seen a huge uptake in the mainstream adoption of crypto. Whilst self-custody and self-management of your tokens is great, the safekeeping of that becomes problematic as well after that, right? Do the users know how to manage those keys post, let's say, if you store it into a cold wallet, are you going to fall into a scam that is going to release your keys later on? There's so many things you got to think about, right? The alternative is today, back in the day, I maybe I'm showing my age. You used to get your share certificates. Nobody sees share certificates today, right? Technically, they're not your certificates because they're held by a custodian or a nominee and a trustee, right? I reckon it's a balance between those two. And, we certainly feel like, again, maybe it's me as crypto.com. We have taken the view that, we've got the technology and the infrastructure to actually protect and actually provide our customers with that degree of confidence and trust that A, we're going to do the right thing, and B, we have the infrastructure to protect those keys, right? So that's my view, but Ryan, you might have something else.
No, nothing to add to that. Very elegantly answered.
Good. Any other questions around the room?
Carl, I just wanted to go back to your comment for the lawyers to just get together and deal with it. And I'm not a lawyer, I'm not practicing as a lawyer. Looking internationally, in a lot of areas of financial regulation, the governments in the US and Europe don't agree with each other. And then when you try to, so I guess then you can either follow one or the other, or you can create a bit of a camel that's somewhere in between. Do you think that is a challenge that faces crypto regulation? And if so, do you have any ideas on how to solve that problem?
It's a great question. I guess it was one that we were sort of speaking to earlier. I guess that sort of that difficulty in sort of aligning harmoniously across the globe is I think this is one that's going to persist for a while. I think that you've got different interests in different jurisdictions as well. In the US, there's a whole sort of like who's got jurisdiction over what. Like there's sort of infighting about that. Like, am I regulating that? Is he regulating that? In Europe, I mean, they're trying to cater to 27 or whatever the number is different member states, and sort of it's almost like a bargain that's going around and sort of horse trading, and you know each different jurisdiction is going to have its own perspective of that, and I think that's a challenge that I wish I knew the answer to. I think it's one that, like, I'd like to think that a really dominant, effective regime comes in a country and everybody sort of gradually goes, yeah, actually, you know what, that is working really effectively. But maybe I'm a bit too optimistic on that one.
Thanks, Ryan.
I'm going to just add a little bit to that, right? Yeah, I don't like camels. I think they scare me. They do, unfortunately, a bit of broom and it scares me. So I think the Europeans and the Americans have got a very different model. You know, in the US, again, you know, each state has got its own program, so it's state-based as well, right? But I want to come back to Australia, right? Because you know, here's where the country I live in, and I believe in it, and I think we've got the right ingredients because we've shaped our own destiny since day one, right? And I think we have the ingredients to do that, and to do that in a way that creates and strikes the right balance. Now, the second thing that, you know, why I feel strongly that we can do it as well is because as an island nation, we're dependent on also creating an industry that exports internationally. You know, you guys, SwiftX is a good example, expanding internationally, and we want to support that, right? And also bring in international, this is a plug-in, international innovation into the country. And that's been the story of our island nation. And did we look up to the Europeans? Maybe a little bit. Did we look up to the Americans? Maybe a little bit. But we created our own path. And I think that's where we should be heading. And the second part to that as well is the degree of collaboration between policymakers and regulators with industry doesn't really exist. I mean, there's lobby groups that do that in the US and Europe, right? But here, you know, you get to have a direct conversation with the policymakers. So I sense, this is me being the eternal optimist, we'll find the right balance.
Great. I think there was one question over there, the final question.
Do I have to stand up? No. Hi, my name is Edwin. I'm the head of legal at CoinJar. Carl, just wanted to refer to a previous comment. You said we should get on with, get on with it, regulatory clarity, all that stuff. But I suppose, isn't the reason why we don't have regulatory clarity is because it's a very tough subject, and getting the settings wrong could just kill innovation. It could kill all exchanges in Australia overnight. And I guess, to me, it's not really a bad thing that like Treasury is trying to get it right, start from the basics all over again. Is it such a bad thing if it take another 2 to 3 years to get that clarity? And maybe in the meantime, maybe what we really need is some kind of no action letter or something by the regulator, like what they do in California, for example, while we wait.
Do you want that? I think actually it's a good suggestion actually, and I guess I spoke earlier about that tension between regulation and innovation and the problems that causes. But I think perhaps that sort of idea of a regulatory sandbox might be something that works well. That sort of gives sort of I guess, a temporary license to continue to operate while we really work this stuff out. On the flip side, I guess I would say that the longer that we take to act, the further behind we might get. Like maybe somebody else is going to steal a march on us, and sort of they become the template, they become the crypto hub. It's all about balance, and I think if we're all pulling in the same direction, I think we'll get the right answer.
I'm going to say this not because the policymakers are in the room, but it's just my own life principle, right? It's look, I take a different view because I think if I look at that reasoning, right, that 2 years, let's take our time, that makes the assumption that the policymakers and regulators have an intent to kill this industry, right? I don't think that. I think the intent and nature is one of, responsible regulation, right? So responsible to enable responsible innovation. So again, I think this thing could be done and dusted in 3 months if we put our minds to it. I mean, as a nation, we've done it before, right? Let's get on with it, right? So that's my call to action. Let's get on with it. Let's get together. Sorry, I'm just going to take 1 minute, right? So if you think about how the country was built, it was not people debating things. They just got on and got shit done, right? That's how the country was built. And I think, we spend so much time because maybe of international influence or whatever. And I reckon, we've got all the right ingredients in the nation. We've got all the right brains in the nation, right? We just got to get together and just agree with it. And maybe it'll not be perfect. Maybe it'll be a camel, but at least the camel moves.
And we've already got a framework in the AFSL.
Yeah. Totally.
Fantastic.
Maybe
Well,
that's why I'm the lawyer, you're the CEO.
on that positive note, we have to come to an end. Thank you very much. Please join me in thanking Carl Mohan and Ryan Parsons for a very illuminating discussion. Thank you
Thank you.
both.
Thanks a lot,
Thank
David.
you.
Cheers.
Thank you very much for that very entertaining discussion. Okay, I think we're going to get started. So, our second last panel for today is all about diversifying your funding to accelerate growth. The speakers on our panel are Jen Kiang from FundSquire, David Weir from Radium Capital, Matt Fatal from Birchall, and moderating the panel is Alice from BDO. Thanks, guys.
Yes. Beautiful. Day 2 of Intersekt. How exciting. Okay, well, today, not only just an Intersekt day, it's also an Are You OK day. So before I kick off and talking about diversifying funding, I'd like to ask you all, are you okay? Are you okay? You okay?
I was a bit dusty this morning, but I'm feeling a lot better now.
Fantastic. Are you okay, Jen?
A bit dusty myself too.
And how about you, David?
I'm a little tired.
Okay.
I'm
How
good.
about everyone here? Are you okay? Fantastic.
I think I'll be more okay at 5:30.
Beautiful. Looking forward to it. So let me introduce you to our amazing panel. So Jen Kiang, Partnerships Manager from FundSquire. David Weir, welcome from Perth. I know you flew in this morning. CEO of Radium Capital. And next to me, Matt Vitale, co-founder and managing director from Birchall. So Matt, on our earlier chat, discussing about this team, you introduced me to a term that I actually use as a hashtag for this session, hashtag funding mix. So can you tell us more about what is funding mix and why it is important?
Yeah, I think, thank you. So what we do is equity crowdfunding, and it's really making equity capital available to small and medium businesses for the first time. And when you think about it, it's actually a pretty sophisticated way to raise capital. And large companies, have treasury functions, and they, choose different sources of capital in a fairly sophisticated way. I think the exciting thing for businesses now is that products and services and businesses are starting to emerge to service small and medium businesses, allowing them to tap fairly sophisticated ways of raising capital. And it's not just about equity, it's debt, it's all different types that all have their advantages and disadvantages. But it's exciting to kind of be part of this movement, allowing companies to think about how they're sourcing capital in a far more sophisticated way than's been possible previously.
Fabulous. Well, David, I think you also mentioned about funding mix as well this morning. Do you want to add some comments on that?
Yeah, sure. I think obviously at Radium we do a fairly specialised loan, but we're the first to actually mention that what we do will not get your company from go to woe. You need to have a variety of tools at your disposal. Debt, equity, different types of debt as well, secured differently. I think trying to pin all your hopes on one strategy, obviously, and then before you look for the next is actually not only time consuming, but it could be dangerous. When you talk about startup companies only having limited runway, having a variety of options, variety of things that you're doing, really diversifying that capital stack is hugely important. I actually think even on our website we say something along the lines of capital stack and only a part thereof, and we're quite open about that point.
Thank you. So Jen, I'm going to move on to you. I also learned a new term from our coffee catch up, which is revenue-based financing. Can you share some light on this and how FundSquire has helped startups and businesses through this method of funding?
Yeah, thank you. I think just for all of you here to give you some context of like where we sit in this funding mix, what I suppose Radium and FundSquire, we're probably in the non-dilutive capital space, and then Matt's obviously in equity crowdfunding. So we'll be kind of giving our own comments from our perspective and our lens here. And with FundSquire, how we participate in the funding mix, just going back to that, is we have a few products and we offer a few variations and options of debt funding solutions for businesses. So one of them being revenue-based financing. And actually that product is born out of what we do in R&D funding and government grants funding. Actually, it came from businesses who we were working with, and they no longer were they basically graduated from the R&D tax incentive scheme. They started earning revenue, and they still needed more money. Everybody needs more money. So that's when revenue-based funding came out. So I suppose the one that we see in the market most is around for e-commerce companies. But at FundSquire, we have a strong focus on SaaS, providing this product specifically for SaaS businesses as well. I think the SaaS space needs more love funding-wise. So revenue-based funding is really about providing companies with growth capital. And I think it's not for everyone, but as long as you're in the mindset where you want to increase your ARR 2 times, 3 times, this is a product that will be more suited for you.
Fantastic. So, David, like maybe do you want to touch on more about R&D, like how does it work, and again, who's it for?
Sure, yeah, and obviously we do a very similar product to FundSquire. Both companies obviously think it's a fantastic product, and a lot of companies that we help out. R&D financing, I like to say we make a good thing better. So all we realistically do is bring the expected cash flow from the annual tax payment for a company, and we provide it to a company in year by way of term loan. What that does is it obviously brings the cash flow forward, or the cash event forward, into the company, and enables them to access that cash right there and then, and reinvest it back in their business. When we're talking about early stage startup companies, ultimately cash is going to be king. Runway is going to be within an arm's reach, and so you want to be able to give companies line of sight as to how that works. I think the R&D tax incentive is a fabulous scheme, and it's been replicated in several other countries. But probably the biggest downfall is the timing of the cash. In some cases it can be up to 18, even longer, before 18 months, before that cash is actually received. And when we're again talking about early stage startup companies that are raising limited amounts of money, 18 months, I can tell you right now from being a founder myself, that's a long time before your next cash event, right?
I just wanted to add to that point. So if any of you were on the panel yesterday around venture debt, someone asked how can a business not earning revenue get debt? And basically, no one has the answer, but I think we do.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I think R&D product is so many of the businesses we work with, and we provide this source of debt capital. They're not earning a cent of revenue.
Absolutely. I mean, one of the underlying premise of the R&D tax incentive is that around revenue and what you're earning and profitability of the company. My quick answer to that one actually is when they say, how can they take on debt? We say, well, we're going to give you a loan, but somebody else is going to pay it off for you. And that's the federal government. This becomes, for us, it becomes an eligibility assessment. And it becomes, what obviously is that underlying tax credit. What we're focused on is what the tax credit is and how likely are you to get it. And then we're pairing that cash event with your term loan. So, to direct down to that, how can you give a startup company debt? Well, you need to look at alternative ways to actually service the debt, and the way we're servicing it is with the receipt of the government tax incentive. So it is definitely foreign, right? I'll give you that, right? Debt and startup should be mortal enemies, right? But as products evolve, we're starting to see that companies are coming out with very interesting different debt products that are actually focused and specifically targeted at early stage startup companies.
I've got a comment on this too, because when I first became aware of these products, the other thing that I found really interesting was you can actually increase your claim because you're getting the cash earlier. Like, I was kind of, yes, all right, someone else is paying the loan, but that's what made me really sit back, was like, is this magic? Like, because you're getting the cash earlier and then you're able to invest more into R&D, and then your claim can actually be higher.
Bang on. So you can come work for us and FundSquire. Yeah, it's dead right. You spend more, you get more. And then there's interesting models which both we and FundSquire have about reinvesting early. You're spending more on R&D. I mean, no early stage growth company ever said we don't need any more money, right? You can always use it, you can always spend it. So let's work out a way to give it to them.
Yeah, and then just kind of speaking to the crowd here, because obviously all of us here are fintechs or we work in the space. So I think particularly for this product, like around 40% of the businesses that we work with are in software, so very aligned to us industry. And out of that 40%, a big proportion of it are fintech companies, because especially those, a lot of you guys are obviously earning revenue or a small amount, but there are also a lot out there who aren't, and they need this sort of type of funding.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, on that topic, Matt, like maybe coming back again to you about crowdfunding, another
Dilutive
special. There you
capital.
go, special word again. Do you want to maybe talk more about what is crowdfunding? Like, what's the special art about it, and who is best suited for? As you know, Jen mentioned, like there's a lot of fintechs coming to that space, but also with crowdfunding, I guess it can sort of touch to other audience.
Yeah, thank you. Look, crowdfunding, it's a bit of a problematic term for us, because reward crowdfunding is another model of crowdfunding, which is not what we do. So in the early days, a lot of people were thinking that we're like, Kickstarter and Indiegogo, where you get something nominal value. And things that are project based. That's not what we do. What we do is help companies make a regulated offer of securities online. And in Australia, this was talked about over several years. The legislation came in, and we received our financial services license in 2018. There's essentially two game changers of the regime. The first is that proprietary limited companies can now have a potentially unlimited number of shareholders. So previously, you'd need to convert to a public structure once you got over 50 shareholders. Anyone that's acquiring shares through a crowdsourced funding offer is excluded for the purpose of that test. So we've got proprietary limited companies who've hosted offers for that have quite literally hundreds, thousands of investors. The second game changer is these offers can be advertised online in a far more liberal way than really, any other securities offer. And social media platforms, digital advertising, are all like really fertile ground for us to build audiences of interested investors for these offers. So in that environment, businesses that have a story to tell that can engage a broad audience of investors are the ones that are supremely positioned to do well with crowdfunding. So lots of B2C businesses for sure, but it is broader than B2C. We've hosted lots of craft brewers on the platform, and they're like really fun businesses to be associated with. But also lots of fintechs as well. And, it makes sense for a business that obviously, is appealing to a consumer audience, but also businesses that are addressing a very relatable pain point. So Thrive, which is rebranded to Thriday, they're probably one of our biggest successes on the platform. We helped them raise $3 million early last year. They were pre-product, pre-launch. They raised $3 million at a $13 million valuation, invested in by some top tier VCs alongside retail investors. This deal kind of had it all, and that product is about to launch now, and it's really rewarding seeing that thousands of people that have kind of been involved in that process have been a part of bringing this product to life. So yeah, it's been really kind of transformational as an opportunity for early stage businesses.
And I think you talk to investors and startups regularly, travel around. Is there sort of like a key team at the moment around their funding journey?
Sorry, a theme?
Yeah.
Ours is a really broad church. We produce industry reports, and it's like a really kind of diverse set of industries that have used crowdfunding. So obviously consumer, but fintech, healthcare. We had a lot of medicinal cannabis businesses that used us last year. It's really broad, and I think the reason for that is it is an incredibly efficient way to organise an equity capital round, and more and more businesses are becoming aware of this, the opportunities that what we do presents. So really broad application.
Thanks. Well, David, moving on to you. As part of Brevet Capital in the US, and also having worked in Canada and US yourself, what are you seeing the differences between the funding trends being done in Australia and overseas?
Yeah, sure. So, Radium Capital is part of a globalized fund which is run out of New York. So we have assets across the world. In terms of what we're seeing, and it's a lot, is the quick answer to that. Particularly in Northern America, we joke you could finance your morning coffee if you really wanted to, and I think that's actually it's good because there's options, but it's also terrifying for a business because the noise is it's immense. And then one of the things that we always advise people is you really need to assess all options. Like we sort of said at the top, is that pinning all your hopes down to one sort of strategy could actually could end troublesome, right? And so I guess what I am seeing around the world is noise and cut through and being able to actually decipher what's a good option, what's a bad option. And probably the final thing would be is that what's good at a point in time may not be the best thing to do at another point in time. So whilst the option of debt, equity, timing, time of year is one thing, time of company, scale up, from Series A. So I guess if I could summarize that point, what we're seeing is particularly in North America, a whole lot of other options coming from revenue-based financing. See a lot of that. To short-term unsecured debt companies are absolutely exploding in North America. See SoFi Bank in Canada trying to provide financing to anything that moves. So yeah, like noise is certainly something we see a lot of. So.
Yeah, for us in Australia, at least FundSquire, we operate in Australia, UK, and Canada. We can compare the markets. We do compare them internally, but at least for what we see in Australia, there has never really been more options for alternative funding than there are today. I think there's also a huge movement and education piece around what's out there. Like, for example, virtual would be a really good example of what we do at FundSquire, or even like venture debt options out there. There are so many more options out there in the US, in the UK, far less here in Australia. And that's the opportunity that we see, that we see startups in this landscape kind of being educated into knowing what these options are, and also being a little bit more open, knowing the current climate that it is today. They're a little bit more open-minded in finding out how to get capital and what's the smart way of doing so.
Thanks, Jen. Well, another buzzword throughout Intersekt and in the fintech world, we keep hearing hashtag collaboration, hashtag partnerships. Jen, do you want to share the upcoming collaboration that FundSquire has at the moment?
Nothing in the bag at the moment, but I can talk about partnerships as a whole, because that's really kind of the key focus in what I do and what FundSquire does as well, because we really lean into these partnerships that we have. So a few verticals. So for example, like FinTech Australia, they've been an amazing partner of ours. They've really enabled us to be to really dig deeper into the FinTech community, to contribute more, to be part of these events as well. And also Austrade, because it's also really helped us kind of go global with some of their little road shows happening around. But all these more partners as well, like with consultants, with accounting firms, because that's really the space we operate in the R&D and government incentive space. And also tech partners, we take them very seriously as well. And the likes of community builders like Startup Victoria, potentially virtual.
Well, we're catching up for beers tomorrow night. The Cherry Tree Hotel. Anyone's welcome. So
yeah, I mean, it was pretty clear when, for example, a virtual FundSquire partnership, because I do realize that we share so many similar businesses that we work with, and that's when something clicked, I suppose.
Beautiful. Well, David,
yeah,
I think you
probably on the partnerships. I think one of the things that we have a lot of industry-based partnerships. client partnerships, all those things. I think what I boil them down to is trust. In Australia, the debt markets are only just starting to grow, and a lot of businesses don't really trust the debt providers, mostly because out of I guess not understanding what we're actually doing. So we've got a lot of industry partnerships, and what we're trying to build out of those is actually trust of the people that are, industry-based groups. We work with Cicada Innovations in Sydney and a few other things. So, but yeah, I mean, they're important, but really what we're trying to do there, and it's kind of why we're here today talking about what debt does and how it can drive your business. Realistically, for us at least, they're there to build trust. And as I think our market grows and our service offerings become more clear in the market, potentially they'll look a lot different moving forward.
Yeah, I think I recall you mentioned some work with Tractor Ventures. Do you want to maybe touch on that as well?
Yeah, sure. So like I said before, we really specialize in R&D financing. We don't do revenue-based financing. So we actually just partnered with Tractor Ventures earlier on this year, and they actually provide the revenue-based financing for our clients, which is good. Again, we really see the need for that product. We think it's a great product. It works well. It's as you rightly point out, it's a logical step for an R&D based company to then move into revenue-based finance. So that's why we actually decided to go down the partnering road, because it's not something that we at Radium Capital nor our parent fund wanted to move into that particular product. We're looking at other ones that we're doing around grants and other types of stuff. But yeah, the revenue one, and that's been really well received by both our customers, Tractor Ventures, and I think that's a really good example of where partnering up in industry to do what you do and to do it well has worked well.
Yeah, that's actually pretty awesome, that collaboration, actually. So it just reminds me of another kind of partnership that we also focus on, which is very relevant to the hashtag funding mix that you were talking about, was a strong partnership that we have in the VC space with other investors, with also angel syndicates here in Australia, because we do understand that sometimes, like for example, I would speak to a business that may need a bridging round of, say, $1 million, but based on what we can offer at FundSquare, we may only make up 50% of that, but they still need to look for the other 50%. So it's about the funding mix and the education around how do you fill up the other 50% of what you need. And that's when we actually go out to our network of partners and let them know, we have this awesome company. They're in need of this. We're willing to do the DD for them and also fund this amount. Who wants in, So that's something that we take really seriously, because we also want to add value to the businesses through partnerships.
Thank you. Matt, do you want to add to that?
Yeah. Look, in terms of our partnerships, like our experience has really been like building awareness for a new industry, and we haven't been able to do that alone because we're the intermediary that hosts these offers. So we don't give the companies legal advice or accounting advice. We kind of point them in the right direction for people that understand what we do. And it was really critical in the early days to have, I suppose, forward-thinking professionals that kind of believed in what this industry could be. And I'm talking about organizations like Blue Rock, they're kind of multidisciplinary accounting and legal practice that we do a lot of work with. Ashurst, they're our lawyers. Many of them have really kind of bought into the potential of what we can do. And that's been critical because for a company to go through a crowdfunding offer, there are some fundamental things that change about their business. They'll end up having hundreds or thousands of shareholders, and they'll sit directly on their register. So, this often means terminating a shareholder's deed, updating your constitution, a lot of things that, people in the early days would sit back and say, what? Like, this is not how these things are done. But a lot of thinking and a lot of really kind of, clever people have like looked at these issues, and we've kind of established some industry norms, but we wouldn't have been able to do that alone. It's been all collaboration and partnerships. And I suppose now we're kind of starting to achieve, some scale and some further momentum. We're building out our team, and partnerships is going to be a really key strategy to ensure that, we're still growing at healthy rates over the next few years.
Thank you. Well, to wrap up, like the last question, I've attended a lot of sessions for the last 2 days, so I borrowed it. What's the wish list or what's the product roadmap for Radium Capital, David?
Well, what Radium is going to do, we're just going to, quite frankly, we're going to stick to our knitting. We really take what we do in R&D financing, particularly I'm talking about here in Australia, quite seriously. We want to be specialists in the market, and we're focusing on this market. So that's really where we're going to put 90% of our attention. That said, we are looking at things in the grant space and how we finance those. It's difficult. It's hard. We're committed to looking at it, but I think past the look, that's where we are. So in summary, we're going to do what we do well and stay with the R&D and continue to grow that. I think it's a great market. I think what we provide for borrowers really, it's evidence from itself in terms of how much we've lent and how many people we've helped, and people coming up to me here today saying, "Hey, that helped us." So I think that's where we're going to focus. That's where we're going to stay.
And how about FundSquire, Jen?
Well, we essentially at FundSquire want to be the one-stop shop for startup funding. With obviously right now we have a strong focus in the non-dilutive capital space. We still want to push that message through our different products. Of course, maybe potentially adding one more to the product suite would always benefit the businesses we work with, because most of the time, the businesses I work with and the startups I work with don't just use one type of funding that we provide. It's common to see 2 or even 3 types of funding through FundSquire. So that's the plan.
Fantastic. So lucky last, Matt, any wish list or, product roadmap for Virtual?
We're in a really, I suppose, fast-growing industry. It's the beginning of the industry here. So we look to, similar industries overseas as the relevant precedent for what we can expect. Obviously, capital markets are a little bit choppy at the moment, but equity crowdfunding's been growing 70% year on year as an industry the last few years. So we're just doing everything we can to continue that growth trajectory with our core offering. But we raised capital earlier this year because we're building out a suite of products and services, because we see what we do as the emergence of a new asset class, offered at scale to retail investors for the first time, early stage businesses. So we're releasing an investor reporting tool in the next few months, because we see that companies really should be doing a lot better than they are in terms of communicating with their hundreds or thousands of investors post the raise. And we've just piloted our secondary trading product. So we tested this on ourselves. So we ran a market and facilitated secondary trading of shares. So that product will be out for general release next year as well.
Fantastic. So I think we have time for questions. Okay. Okay. Well, thank you very much for joining us. Please join me to thanks all the panel here. Thanks.
Right to go? Yeah, I can hear it now. Yeah, that's great. We'll
Thank you so much. That was a bit full on, wasn't it? Just kicked that panel off and thought that we should be here. Sorry, it is the end. We want to let you guys get to the next phase, right? Which is drinks, as I understand it. So, my name's Emma Weston. I'm from Agri Digital. Such a pleasure to be facilitating on today's panel. We did have a few kind of great introductions planned with fun facts, but we're actually going to jump straight into it, I think. So I have Katrina Donaghy from Civic Ledger, Bridie Olsen from Giora, Charlotte Cadness from NAB, and also Carbon Place. We might come somehow explain that a little bit as we go along, and Hayden Dyer from NAB Ventures. So really, really awesome panel to be digging into successful blockchain use cases. And I will also say that on stage there are 3, if I can include myself, winners of the Finney's Excellent in Blockchain and DLT Awards. So actually 4 times between the 3 of us. Well, thank you. You didn't have to say that. So we will get started, and we've got a few things we want to talk about, but we also want to involve you guys as well. So perhaps if there is a burning question, put your hand up. I'm going to try and scan around the room, and we'll just get you to stand up and yell, because we know that we're on a time, like a tight timeline. So we're just going to kick off with, I really wanted to tell your fun facts, actually. So I'm just going to, no. Okay, we don't have the time for fun facts. If you want to hit me up afterwards to find out fun facts about each of these guys, then you can do that. So we'll jump straight in with what makes a successful blockchain use case? Katrina, do you want to kick us off?
I think it's always, and people who know me, I'm like a old record. It's about what is the problem you're solving, and is this the best technology to solve that problem that's going to make the experience better for your customers, as opposed to what's already in the offering of the market.
Bridie.
Emma, I know you're not going to mind me doing this, but I'm going to totally just trash the word use case. I want to hand it to Hayden's beloved Dockers on Saturday night and just send it flying, because I hate that word. I think it puts us in a position as FinTech companies where our products just become up for like justifying their existence, because what I would rather see is us talking about like used cases. Where are we actually using this technology? Where are we using this technology to create something and build something better? And then I guess the definition of success becomes more of a technical definition. Maybe it's like a definition of done. Has it been peer reviewed? Is it deployed? Is it documented? And most importantly, like Kat was saying, does it meet the user expectations and the user requirements of your specific use case, whether that's water, ag, carbon, whatever industry we're in?
I think that's a really interesting point around not sitting in the kind of the to market space for too long. And so maybe a successful blockchain use case is a used case. And we need to kind of introduce that that kind of term into what we're doing. From an incumbent and an investor perspective, and I'm just going to save you lucky last on this question, Charlotte. But what are you thinking about this, Hayden? What do you see? Do you agree? I'd love it if you disagree with. It's always entertaining when panelists disagree. So, what's your view?
I think it's great that Bridie's always just trashed your title to begin with. So
I know.
It's good to give you a fire into the last panel. And yes, I am a tragic Dockers fan. So if anyone else is going to the game Saturday night, or if you're a Collingwood supporter, let me know either way, because it's a long time between drinks and we haven't won a flag yet. So we need all the support we can get. From like a venture capitalist perspective, I look for just the same things in terms of like traction, growth metrics. I actually love it when a founder comes to me and says either we're creating a new market or this is a 10x better solution in an existing market. I don't actually care what the technology is, in a sense. Like the fact that we're talking about blockchain today is just because there's one exciting, innovative solution. I think we've moved past the initial phase in terms of this is a new technology. I mean, it's been around now for enough. And so that we are in a phase now where we're actually building real products. There are real world use cases out there, and we don't need to be justifying its existence this is a technology that is solving problems today, and that's what actually gets me most excited.
Yeah, thanks, Hayden. And Charlotte, can you weave into your perspective a little bit about Carbon Place as well? So is that a use case in and of itself? Is it the application of a use case? Like how do you think about it, and what are you doing in that space?
Yes, thank you. So I am from NEB, but I am also, I've got two hats on today, representing Carbon Place, which is a new entity that we are establishing with in a consortium with other global banks. And the reason we came to what is now Carbon Place is, again, back to that problem, like where we have wicked problems that need to be solved, how can new technologies help solve that? Blockchain is part of the solution for the climate challenge that we're facing into. There's other nascent technologies that'll all kind of come together nicely under the covers. But in the end, for me, successful blockchain use cases are really where there's a problem, where it makes sense for this technology to help solve for some of those issues in that market. And then to be able to, from a user perspective, it doesn't matter what's under the covers. It's just the experience is good, it makes sense, and it's helping to solve the problem.
So why did you build Carbon Place on Ethereum then?
Why?
Yeah.
Because it is interoperable. So the idea is that, again, we aren't going to, the idea is that we're not going to solve this problem. We're not going to be the only player in the market, and there's multiple players who need to interconnect in order to help solve for the problem. So we're part of a puzzle. Yeah.
I think that's a really interesting point, and I think, Bridie, maybe you're going to jump on that as well.
Like,
so I'm going to let you go.
I heard Ethereum, and I was like, oh, next week they're all waiting.
Yeah. Do you want to jump in? And
I think it's really interesting because we are talking about use cases as much as I don't want to be.
No,
but
we
I
can
think
talk about use
it's
cases.
interesting because the best part of that is like the technical choices. And when we're looking at something like EVM as a way of interoperating and bridging tokens between.
What does that mean?
Ethereum virtual machine.
Thank you.
Sorry, that's totally my bad. That's terrible. I've obviously got Ethereum on the mind. If anyone is like tracking the 15th of September, like I am, that's the launch of ETH 2.0, we hope. So I think it's really interesting when we look at a use case and technical architecture and technical choices, we are making those decisions based off of requirements of our end user, which is to be able to bridge a token from Civic Ledger into Giora, into Carbon Place, and data coming from Laggard Digital. Like that's what I know. I'm selling all of us at once. So is that allowed?
I'm just here to facilitate. But I think it's an interesting point, and maybe we extend the successful blockchain use case question slightly to think about it, particularly in the context of FinTech use cases or used cases. Up here on the panel, just because we did jump quickly straight in, and you may not realize, all of you, but there's actually 3 companies here at a bank. You probably get the bank, but the three companies up here, we are all dealing in agricultural commodities, or supply chain in some way. So why is that? And all 3 of us won Finnies awards and I should say we're using blockchain and DLT. We're just going to use blockchain today, but think about it interchangeably for everyone. So we'll just be in broad church on blockchain. Is that FinTech? Is that are we FinTech use cases? Is everything FinTech? Therefore, like what is the best FinTech use case or used case that you're seeing apart from maybe what we're doing?
I think Dom said that this morning. Dom from Up, he said, FinTech is everything. And we said like before that everything is a tech company, and now everything is a FinTech company. So I mean, I think that's totally relevant to agriculture. I mean, finance is a huge part of it. You sit in an ag room though and talk about finance, and sometimes people look at you like you're on the periphery, and you sit in a FinTech room and talk about agriculture, and people go, "Oh, why are you talking about ag?" But it's totally. I mean, it's a huge industry. So, I mean, I'm not answering your question at all, Emma. Sorry, but
no, not at all. I mean,
everything is a FinTech. Is that the answer?
I was going to answer that.
Yeah,
I mean, exchange of value. I mean, for me, this is about exchange of value, whether it be asset and ownership of assets, as well as currency and payments. So that's kind of what it comes down to. So I see it as a fintech.
And so, Hayden, you did invest recently in Giora, and so I obviously know that Giora is your favourite, but we just won't say that. for real. So outside of Giora, what are you seeing from a fintech use case perspective that's super exciting to you at the moment?
Yeah. So, I mean, I'll give away my trade secret as a venture capitalist. I look for 5 T's: team, TAM, traction, technology, and timing. And so, whenever the use case, whether it's fintech or any other one, you obviously need to have a great team. The TAM needs to be massive. You'd need to have a technology. I think about the defensibility moat. And then you obviously need to have some traction depending on what stage you are. But the key thing I think about is timing, because I love surfing. And so you could be in the middle of the ocean paddling your surfboard, but there is no wave to catch, then you aren't catching a wave, you aren't surfing. And so right now, I think we're seeing a beautiful time for fintech, because you're starting to see some of these waves develop. So these 3 amazing companies here, the startups, and NAB's a great company as well, that are building these companies, they're paddling their surfboard, but you still need a wave to catch in order to go surfing. And so now with a lot of the regulation coming through, a lot of clarity around that, I mean, Australia's just a fast follower behind a lot of things that are happening overseas. But because we're getting some clarity now, the narrative has shifted from, I went to consensus like a few years ago in New York, it was all about prices and that sort of crap. Now it's about the technology. I mean, Bridie's jumping out of his skin about Ethereum 2.0. None of us up here are talking about pricing. We're talking about the underlying technology. That's because we've come forward so far that we're getting a lot of clarity around the roadmap, and it's time now to build. So that's what I'm getting most excited about, is that the narrative has moved away from watching prices to actually building the underlying technology, because the hats off goes to all these amazing companies building on this technology, creating new solutions, not worrying about what the debate is in terms of which layer one is going to win or what price is. It's actually using the technology. So we're at this moment now because we have this clarity for that.
Yeah, let's switch gears a little bit and just kind of go to the Reserve Bank of Australia. So many of you would be aware that the RBA recently announced that it would be trialling a digital Australian dollar, or was looking at ways in which it could be trialling a digital Australian dollar, otherwise, affectionately known as a DAD. And we all need our DAD. That's what most people up on this panel think, I think, but maybe not. Let's explore that. So from a startup to scale up perspective, Katrina, what does this really mean? Is this exciting? Is it the shot that blockchain needs to go mainstream? What's your perspective?
I'm so excited. Like, Bridie and Emma and I have been in this industry for so long. I remember watching Emma, doing.
It's not quite that long.
No. Well, it is for us because when we started early all those years ago, we were alone. Like when we were actually at APAC Blockchain Conference in 2017 in lineups and lunch, having Joe Lubin there, getting our lunch, and him standing up on the stage telling us about Ethereum 2.0 in 2017. I still have that deck, and I think Ethereum was $43 or something like that. But we've been waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting for so long to have this conversation. And we've been extremely patient, even though we almost died as companies along the way. So we really had to buckle down and focus on how do we actually solve problems and get ready for this conversation. So I was very lucky to be in the roundtable with the CBA and talking about the CBDC. And I could not wait to say, hey, here is a use case. And we have been waiting for so long, and this is why it makes sense. The world that I work in is around civic applications of the technology. So I work with regulated publicly shared resources. Ultimately, you as taxpayers are actually invested in the resources that we actually digitize. So when we look at water, all of you in this room subsidize water. So if we look at the whole idea of using a central bank digital currency, therefore we can actually program how we can account for the financial transactions when we can get water, title, and money moving at exactly the same time to remove counterparty risk. But you as taxpayers can have a lens into where is water going, who owns it, what's its value, because right now, every time you want to know where it is, it ends up on the front page of the newspapers, and we have another Royal Commission of Inquiry. And more of our taxpayers go into trying to work out who has what, who's taking more than their fair share. So finally, we have an opportunity to open up a window into transparency, accountability, and also create a better experience for our farmers and our agricultural industries to get on, so they can get on with the job that they do and grow our food and fibre. That's what I get very excited about.
Are you microphone at the ready there, Hayden?
Ready.
You ready? Is this the kind of the beginning of the end? I'm just being melodramatic here for banks. If taxpayers and small businesses have a call direct on the RBA for their money, what does that mean? How without only divulging what you can divulge, and it might just be personal opinion. I should absolutely state that, by the way, everyone. This is not NAB's opinion on anything up here. So, but what does it mean as a banker, as an investor?
Yeah, so I guess, I mean, with any technology, and I think about with any startup, you always have this tension between, does a startup get to distribution before the incumbent innovates? And we've seen that time and time again through history. I mean, whether it's the gold standard, whether it's currency. And so I think we're in that moment in time now where you have an incumbent, which is, printing money and that circulation. And then you have a startup, which is this new technology looking for distribution. And so we're going to we're living through this tension now. I think it's really exciting. I mean, so folks have seen, Ray Dalio's new book in terms of, the rise and fall of empires and how the currencies played an intricate part in that. And so, I mean, I don't have a crystal ball. I wish I did, or, I probably wouldn't. But it's really exciting to see this technology now challenge the incumbents and force the conversation. So I think it's just an exciting period in time to be in.
Bridie, do you have a view? What does it dad mean to Giora?
Yeah. You can probably all tell by now I'm a bit of like a tech and product geek. So I think the only thing that I would add on top of what Hayden and Katrina have said is that a dad matters. That's a wild sentence. The dad matters because not that we're going to have like an Australian cryptocurrency, but that we can actually program things into money. And as people building products, that's very exciting because it means we can do so much more than what we're doing right now. And so it's awesome to be having these conversations now with a really realistic pathway towards deploying our products with programmable currency as part of the solution. So the cool things there are that we can, some of the things we talk about, Emma, with like the repos and being able to tell via a smart contract exactly where money is going or write rules around what money can and can't do. And it's all been very theoretical. And in the world of crypto, we have to like off-rail from our products into traditional banking systems at the moment in order to make payments out. And so it really just like creates an entire ecosystem for us to build our products in. And that's really, really exciting.
Yes, me. So adding to that, it's the programmable money piece that I think is going to be the game changer when I think about being in an incumbent. The way in which we operate today goes away as dad comes in, and dad kind of is real. It's not only the transfer of ownership of assets, but it's actually being able to settle on chain and do everything on chain, and that will create tension in the incumbent, and we will need to work differently and be different and be better. And my hope is that all of that is passed on to the customer. So you will realise as a customer, even to the individual level, the benefits of speed and lower cost and all of those good things that come with this.
We might just wrap quickly with a quick fire Q&A. So we'll try and keep it to less than 30 seconds, guys, just in case there's a couple of questions in the audience. Just want to give you all, an opportunity to ask from this great panel. So the quick fire question, if you want to think very quickly on your answers, is what is the thing outside of the dad? You can't say the dad because we've already talked about the dad. That you are most excited about in blockchain in the next 12 months, that not just that you're most excited about, that can actually put Australia into a winning position. So what is exciting that's happening that matters to the people in this room, not just to you? Oh, sorry. Who wants to go first? Anyone? Hayden?
I'll go first. So what I'm most excited about, it's time to build, like I said earlier, in terms of that, the clarity. But Australia, because we're starting to see some amazing, like successful stories. I mean, Immutable is just one of them. In terms of, you're starting to see now that you can build globally scalable blockchain-based startups here in Australia. And given we do have a stable system to test and learn in, it's actually a great place to build a startup. And so that's what I'm most excited about, is the narrative has switched from prices to building.
Let's just run straight along the line. So that means you get the N word, Katrina. Charlotte?
So I'm really excited about what we can do from a climate perspective with blockchain, and it's a real use case. And Australia's role within the context of Indo-Pacific region and the infrastructure, if we build the infrastructure right, what role can we play in helping support that? So I'm all about that big picture.
Awesome. Brady?
Yeah, I think in the next year we can be directly sending money to farmers to support what they're doing more sustainably, have a organic or sustainable beer, and send money back to the farmer. That's pretty cool to me.
I think that's cool too. Katrina?
I think I have to echo, and I think we can finally stop talking about blockchain. Thank you. And start actually saying we are valuable companies that are building valuable infrastructure that are solving global problems. And we have always been global right from the day we were born. We've always thought about how do we solve global problems, and this is the infrastructure layer that allows us to do that, so we can be in other countries without having to go through what technology has gone before us. We can immediately go straight into global markets.
So exciting times ahead, and excitingly, from my perspective, we got through a whole 30 minutes without mentioning NFT up until this point, so that's really exciting. But if NFT was the burning reason that you came into the room, now is your chance. So any quick questions, not just on NFTs, anything else, use cases, questions? Yes, down the front, just get up and yell. We're just going to get a microphone to you.
Okay, thank you. You mentioned that the banking system will have to find a way to work with this disruption. Has the banking industry not already worked out what that would look like? Because from a layman's view, that is complete disruption and you're removed from the system. At a very broad level, how does the banking system allow that to happen and have a role in it?
2 minutes for that. Yeah, I think, broadly, I'd say at a high level, banks are talking about this and very much thinking about it. The stepping stones to getting there and how you kind of go from where we are today to where we need to get to. It's quite a change in the way that we run our technology, the way that we think about our customer experience, I would say, and a world that is moving and shaping as we go. So I don't think we've solved it. Certainly, I'm not talking on behalf of NAB. We are certainly looking at it and thinking about it, and I know all the other banks are, and we will go. My view is that it's getting in there and actually experimenting with the technology, building real life use cases, understanding it more. That will help us understand, one, what are the customers' needs and what problems are we solving for, and then how are we going to get from where we are today to the future, which is coming pretty fast in my view.
Is there another question in the room? Yep, one more. Just so we're just coming to you. Just wait one moment, just so that everyone can hear you.
Dilip Rao from the Digital Finance CRC. Can invite all of you, including NAB, to plug into the CBDC pilot project and demonstrate a use case. Putting out a white paper in about a couple of weeks. So welcome.
Okay. You betcha. I don't think that was not a question, was it? That was an order. That was an order. Like, get in there. Anyone else? Otherwise, I'm going to ask you to put your hands together. Oh, no, there is one. Yeah, we've started something now.
I'd love to grab your thoughts on how we separate the technology from the price. Because every time we see, a bit of volatility in the market, and all of a sudden we're on pause.
Yeah. I'll just quickly answer that. So I think Bridie and we all do. We became technology agnostic a long time ago when we saw, when we were working with this tech a long time ago, it was 5 cents. So if you want to be a valuable, sustainable company that's working with this tech, you need to be agnostic and work closely with what your customer needs and think about those commercial implications. EVM is the thing that we look to for whether it be a distributed network or a blockchain. But that is a core to how you select, how you build, what infrastructure you build on. But we have had to do other things to actually mitigate that, and we put those solutions into the way we design our solutions.
Bridie, did you want to jump in on that?
Well, I was just going to say that it sounds like from a lot of these conversations around use cases, people are actually just like trying to sit there to work out which token to buy next. So it's kind of an exciting test point right now where people who say that they really care about the technology are kind of going to be called on that, and to say, well, actually the technology is totally there for things like big projects like Carbon Place that are happening, and the central bank digital currency stuff. Like the tech is there. If you say you really care about the technology, this is a great time to actually be building. And obviously, if you're interested as a trader, great. But that is a different conversation to those of us building products if you're kind of looking more at this as a trading opportunity.
And I think the digital Australian dollar is a massive shot in the arm for that as well, because it obviously gives, a stable store of value that is programmable, that has been lacking, that has it is the piece that has been lacking in a lot of the use/used cases. In fact, it may be what adds the D, so to speak, not digital, but, the D to use, to make it used, because that's what's going to, I think, really, really help things along. Would you help me along by putting your hands together for this amazing panel? And yeah, thank you very much, all of you. That's it on Intersekt. So enjoy the drinks. Thanks.
Remarks in the Savoy room now as well.